So each time I wanted to make a presentation at some point in the past, I would go to a friend and ask them, hey, could you give me some advice on how to make a good presentation? And the one beautiful advice that I used to get was, be confident. Just be confident. Like, how does that work? How can you simply be confident? What are the steps? What are the measures? I didn't really know at that time. And it didn't make much sense to me. So I did not take that piece of advice, but I took the other ones, body language, intonations, tone, etc. But then after making tons of presentations, the way I think of it right now is just don't be confident. Don't even think about it. But the question that rises now is, if you don't think about confidence, how would you make a good presentation? Hello French fries, this is ITEE, and today we are talking about the so-called confidence. Long story short, I'll just make it very simple first, and then we are going to jump into the details of it. 3 things. Be knowledgeable, be prepared, and have assets. And let's elaborate on that. So before we talk about the 3 steps that I just mentioned, I'd like to ask you a question. Think about someone that you find confident. Think of a presentation that you watched recently, or someone that you speak with on a daily basis or something. Someone that you would describe as confident. And let's try to break it down a little bit. What makes that person confident? What makes you say that this person is confident? Is it how they look? Is it how they sound? Is it the words, the specific words they say? Is it some knowledge they have? Is it experience? What is it? Like, we need to know exactly what that is. Think about it. Think about that. And then I'll share with you what I have, and then you share with me what you got. So the first one is knowledge, right? So if you're going to make a presentation about a specific subject, let's, for instance, say thermodynamics. You're making a presentation about thermodynamics. So how much do you know about thermodynamics? If you don't know that much, how much research would you do before actually making the presentation? How much would you read? How much experience do you have in that field? Have you been on a training where you studied thermodynamics? Have you worked with an engineer before? Have you studied it in school? Have you read any books about that? What is the knowledge that you have? If you don't have enough knowledge about that particular subject, at least you would have enough knowledge to answer any possible questions about the part of that presentation you will be given to people. When you stand on a stage and present, there are some expectations from both ways. So either I know very well that I know very well about that subject, thermodynamics for instance, and the audience, they also know how much I know about that subject. So for instance, for example, I go to school and I have my classmates. They know that we are all studying and we are not experts in the field. So when I make a presentation, I am expecting, and I know for sure, that they are not expecting me to provide a professional and an expert-like material. They know that, I know that. However, when I explain something, I need to be knowledgeable about that part I am presenting. So the more knowledge, the more things I read about it, the more books I read, the more research I read, the more articles I read, the more I know more about it, the better the presentation is going to be at the end. So every time I'm about to make a presentation, I always ask this question. What kind of questions would people ask me? And if there is no chance for people to ask, I need to think, What kind of questions would people think of? They don't necessarily have to actually ask me a question, but they are coming to attend for a reason. What is that reason? What knowledge are they looking for? They are looking for A, B, and C, then I should be looking into A, B, and C to provide that knowledge that people are looking for. It is an exchangeable process. You give and they take. So you have to give what they are there to take. Does that make sense? Being knowledgeable and having some knowledge about the subject doesn't necessarily mean that you know everything. No matter how professional or experienced you are in some field, you wouldn't know everything and you might be asked the questions that you don't know the answer to. But what we need to do is to do as much as you can, research as much as you can, read as much as you can before actually making the presentation. And when the time comes and someone asks like a very brilliant question that you don't know, the best way to answer it is, I simply don't know, I really don't know. I don't have a problem with saying I don't know, and I've had lots of occasions where I said I don't know, and people respected that, and later on I would definitely look for that thing that I did not know, and it would increase my knowledge. And when the knowledge increases, the next time you talk about the same subject, you are very likely to make a better presentation. The second thing I would do is to be prepared. And preparation doesn't necessarily mean you have like all the knowledge ready and then you decide to prepare for the presentation. But actually, before making a PowerPoint or some slides on a computer, before writing anything down, there are questions that I suggest we ask. So there is that entity or those people that I am going to present to. I would ask the organizers all kinds of questions, literally, from how many people are going to be there, are there going to be students, professors, professionals, is there going to be a projector, is there going to be a camera, a microphone, a screen in front of me with a timer, or maybe with my slides there. Is there going to be a host that's going to introduce me? Do I have a time limit? Do I have to make a presentation in 5 minutes and 10 minutes? This is going to make a huge difference in how fast you speak, how much information you give. So basically, before taking any steps into preparing, you need to prepare further by asking all sorts of questions to the organizers of the event or the place that you're going to make that presentation in. There is one significant, like absolutely significant question that must be asked before making any presentation. That is, what are people expecting from your presentation? I mean, if you are a language learner or an English learner, there is another part of it, which is what are you expecting from your own presentation? But generally speaking, when people make a presentation, there is always an audience listening to you. So there must be something that you give to them. You have to consider something that they are learning from your presentation. So what are their expectations? Think about it, take notes of it, ask the organizers about it. There could be a theme. Sometimes there is a theme to a particular event, like they're talking about politics, they're talking about science, they're talking about stars. There could be a particular theme to the day. So your presentation has to evolve to that level. Whatever it is you're talking about, you must consider the theme of the day. The reason I am asking, or I do prepare for a presentation and ask lots of questions, is to eliminate as much as possible of problems, bad things from taking place. When you are ready to make a presentation, maybe ready, you may be nervous, worried, anxious in a sense. But let's ask a question. What would make someone nervous? Before or during or even after a presentation? What would make someone nervous? We need to think about what makes someone nervous, and then we eliminate those. Take them out of the way. Take as much as possible out of the way. Think about it. What would make you nervous when you make a presentation? Is it a question that you don't know the answer to? Maybe you can look up some more information to be more familiar with the subject before making the presentation. Is it how big the place is? Maybe you can ask for a smaller place. Is it a microphone? You do want to use a microphone. Some people don't. Then you can ask to just speak loudly to people. Is it like you may be nervous that you can't see your presentation, you need to look at the slides that you prepared? Maybe you can ask to have a screen that shows you the presentations, or maybe you can ask someone that gives you a piece of technology that does that. Less problems, better presentation. Less nervousness, better presentation. So you need to ask as many questions beforehand as possible, and that is a huge part of preparing for your presentation. Aside from the environment of the presentation, there is you and what you say and what you think. So before making the actual presentation, I would rehearse. I would present that to a friend or a few friends and then have them suggest ideas on how to proceed. And one beautiful thing to do is to have prepared thoughts. So you have that idea that you are going to explain to people. You need to think beforehand on how you are going to say it, in what order. Sometimes one sentence could be way better before another sentence. Just arrange your thoughts, arrange what you're going to say beforehand. Sometimes it is a lot better to move on a stage to speak to a group of people. For example, if I'd like to compare a group of boys and girls or males and females, and in the audience, I know that there is going to be boys and females because I already asked that question. Then, when I am making that comparison, I would move a little bit towards the boys when I talk about the boys, and then I would move a little bit towards the girls when I talk about the girls. When I think about what I am going to say, how I am going to say it, and where I am going to say that, it makes a difference. Not necessarily to you, but to the people perceiving the information that you are giving. Number 3 is, let's have assets. And by assets, I mean, it could be people, it could be things, it could be anything. For example, have another person with you. If it is your first time to make a presentation, it is one of my theories. It doesn't necessarily work for everybody, but this is how I recommend it if someone is going for a presentation for the first time. If you're going to make a presentation, have a friend or a colleague or someone else to prepare that presentation with you. The reason being is that you split that nervousness that we talked about, the embarrassment, you share it together. It's not just you having all the eyes looking at you and all the fingers pointing at you, but you have someone else who shares that with you. It's like you are fighting together. Also, that other person prepares part of the presentation with you, so whenever you drop a piece of information or you forget a piece of information, they are there either to remind you or to jump in and say it. And sometimes when people get confused on a particular point that you are telling them, the other person could explain it further by giving a different example, etc. So if you are starting out, it is a good idea, from my humble point of view, to have someone else stand with you and present with you. Another great asset to have is a friend in the audience. I remember that one time a friend of mine was presenting, and I was at the very end in the back, and I was waving at him and giving him like a V victory sign. He did smile to me. However, he was still talking and walking, and the people in the audience would be happy with that. Someone who looks, sounds charming, smiling when they are explaining whatever it is they are explaining. It's always good to be comfortable when you make that presentation. And one way to be comfortable is to have someone in the audience whom you usually feel comfortable with, a friend. So it doesn't really work with lots of people. Some friends are just going to make fun of you or something. If this is going to make you nervous, more nervous, then it's not a good idea. But if you find it helpful, then definitely go for it. When I first started out to make presentations, I remember I always had a piece of paper, a very small piece of paper with just titles, bullet points of what I need to talk about. The reason being is that when I forget, or when I just need to confirm something, I would look. It could be a technical piece of information or a date. I would have these difficult information that you would remember at hand so that I can talk about them. So every time I forget something, I would look and then I would get back to the audience. And looking at the paper has good times and bad times. So when you are in the middle of a particular point, it's not a good idea to just lose the attention of the audience to look. But maybe at the end of a point, moving into another point, you can look at a piece of paper that you have. Or maybe when they are busy with something else, like for example, if you say a joke and then people are laughing, you can take that time to have a look at that. It's not very easy at the beginning, but throughout time, you'll be able to do that. So the point here is, if having a piece of paper with some points on it is going to help you make a better presentation, then this is definitely also a good choice, and I definitely recommend that. One of the assets that some people might find strange, but I really find it useful in one way, is how someone dresses. Sometimes I am supposed to present formally to professionals or something. When I do that, should I be wearing a suit or should I be wearing a dress shirt? When I put on those types of clothes, I might not be very comfortable. Not being comfortable in my clothes, I am definitely not going to be comfortable with the presentation. But if you're okay with the clothes, that's fine. But usually when I go to present, I wear something that I am okay with, I'm used to, I am familiar with, I'm comfortable in. One asset that I usually use, but not necessarily when I speak to the public, it's more like a one-on-one tool that I use. Or maybe when I speak with a professor in his office or something, I usually take a piece of paper that has a reference to what I'm talking about. It could be downloaded from a website or some information about whatever it is I'm talking about. So when I talk, it's either I look at that to remember things, just to look somewhere else other than the professor, or give it out to that professor so that they would look at it instead of looking at me. I like when I take the other person's attention away from me for a second or two. It helps me put my thoughts together, take a breath, just reflect on what I said and what I am going to say. Same thing when you are making a presentation to a group of people. You might hand out some papers to people and then they would look at these papers. Pay attention that at the time they are looking at the papers, we shouldn't be giving out crucial information because they are not exactly paying attention. But yeah, it's a good time to reflect and think about what you said and what you're going to say, calm down, and then continue with the presentation. One other thing that I would use during a presentation, it would be a video. I would display a video that people can watch, or when I have a slideshow with pictures or images that they can look at. It is helpful in two different ways. One way is that if you are providing data, then they can look at that and have a better grasp of what you're saying. Images always help people understand further what you are trying to tell them. The other thing is that when they look, again, they are not looking at you in particular, so it is a good time to think and to take a breath and then continue with your presentation. To recap what we just talked about, no need to be confident, just don't be confident. It's something that you naturally become without thinking about it, without worrying about it. What you need to do is just be knowledgeable, be prepared, and have assets. Don't worry about confidence. Just do those three things and it's just going to come to you naturally without you doing anything. The reason I am telling you about presentations and making presentations because I believe that making presentations and giving out information to people and speaking in public is one great way to practice English or any language in a sense. So when you learn a few new phrases or vocabulary, you implement them in a presentation and then you say that to people. You are making a presentation, practicing public speech, and at the same time you are practicing new vocabulary and new phrases and new quotes, etc. Alright, why don't you go watch a movie maybe and learn a few phrases, take those phrases, put them in a presentation, attend a conversation club and make a presentation and use them. Good luck. Here's something that I am doing this time and I'll be doing it in the future videos as well. I will have a quote, I will say a quote from a movie or a TV show or a video, and then I will ask you what movie this is from, and you guess and let me know in the comments below. Today's quote is, "There's always a way to turn things around, to find the fun." Can you guess what movie that is? Movie nerds out there? Alright, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, Jane.